dark clouds.
I'm a very tired old and worn out man, and my eyes have long been blind. Most things that people say to me just seem to slip my mind. Oh, but the suffering and painful time that were in years long gone are still as clear on my memory as the numbers on my arm. What will become of all the memories? Are they to scatter with the dust in the breeze? And who will stand before the world knowing what to say when the very last survivor fades away? Hold my grandson close to me. His fingers trace the pattern of my teeth. He asks me, Grandpa, tell me, why do you cry? What is it that you fear?
And I tell him there once was another child who smelled as sweet and felt as warm. He was taken from before my eyes, and only I remained to mourn. What will become of all the memories? Are they to scatter with the dust in the breeze? And who will stand before the world that now wishes to deny? Or will they believe in someone who never heard it cry?
There is nothing I can say or do to make things change. Time has a way of passing by so fast, like a fleeting shadow no one will recall. The faces of the past.
What will become of all the memories? Are they to scatter with the dust in the breeze?
Your one thought gives me comfort. It's all that I have left. Oh, I know that God in heaven won't forget.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rabbi Yisrael Hahn. On behalf of Chabad of Spokane and the Jewish community, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome you to a special encounter with Esther Basch, also known as the Honey Girl of Auschwitz. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all those who helped make this evening possible. I'd like to thank Avista Foundation, Innovia Foundation, Washington Trust for their co-sponsorship. I want to thank the Davenport Grand Hotel for their hospitality, and Black Ambassador Limo for their transportation. And thank all our volunteers who gave us a hand in this evening. Also, a special thank you to our musicians for setting the tone for tonight's evening with their wonderful, heartwarming rendition of some of our Yiddish beloved music. We look forward to hear more music later on tonight. Last but not least, I want to thank all of you for coming to hear Esther's story. It speaks volumes to see the strong turnout in the Spokane community again and again that are here to hear not only the firsthand account of history, but hopefully to learn the lessons it teaches us. It is truly inspiring, and thank you so much for being here tonight. Of course, tonight's talk is more timely and relevant in light of the horrific attacks that took place on October 7th in Israel and the huge rise of anti-Semitism across the globe and even here in the United States of America. As a rabbi hosting an event centered on the Holocaust and the lessons we could learn from it, I would be remiss if I would not address the elephant in the room, so to speak, namely the worst massacre of Jews since the days of the Holocaust. If this is not a forum which I could confront this issue head on, I don't know what is. So I hope you will indulge me for a few minutes as I bare my heart and soul in a very open and straightforward manner. The massacre and bloodbath that took place on October 7th sent shockwaves across the Jewish community and across civilized people. The Jewish community as a whole has been traumatized. And it awakened some positive things and some negative things. The sheer glee and joy that these terrorists went around slaughtering and documenting, proudly sharing how they slaughtered and beheaded Jewish babies, gunning down young people at a musical festival, raping and dismembering and degrading women while they were alive, launching thousands of missiles into Israeli populations, nonstop in an unprovoked attack, kidnapping hundreds of innocent civilians, from babies just a few months old to elderly, including a Holocaust survivor, should make it very clear this has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with occupation, colonization, and any other such myth. It has everything to do with sheer hate and evil. If Hamas would have his way today, they have declared this both in Western media, their spokesman, and in Arabic media. They would do a repeat performance, only bigger and worse. They wouldn't stop until every single Jew is killed. They declared this openly in their charter. And if you doubted it, October 7th made it clear they mean what they say. And as we'll hear tonight from our speaker, from Esther, unfortunately the Jewish people have been to this movie. We have seen this scene previously. Some of the most powerful empires in human history, Egypt, Assyria, Babylonia, Greece, Rome, all the way down to Stalin's Soviet Russia, Hitler's Third Reich, have all attempted to annihilate us. they are all vanished. We continue to live. How is that? How is a hunted down nation, constituting less than 1/4 of 1% of the entire humanity, survived and thrived after so much rejection, hate, and persecution? What is the secret of the Jewish immortality? There's one secret. There's one thing we have, one weapon that we had with us under all circumstance, and that is our Torah, our principles and values and morals that we live by, and we pass it to our children and our grandchildren. The same morals and values that laid the foundation of Western civilization and the United States of America. And the same moral and values the anti-Semites and those who seek to destroy us want to uproot and disdain to their core. Hamas wasn't targeting a piece of land. They were targeting the entire Jewish people. They wanted to destroy us because they oppose everything we stand for, especially our celebration of life. Someone very wise said, "We die to protect life. They live in order to die." It's very disheartening to see the reaction of so many people around the world. The war that Israel is now forced to wage. A survival war. We read the news, we see the dangers, we see the hate. We see the reports on campuses. There's a campus here in Eastern Washington that a mother who couldn't sleep for 6 weeks, her and a bunch of other mothers, the students can't walk in the streets. The professors are scared to leave their office because of the anti-Semitism that they see right here in Eastern Washington. Shame on them. We see the double standard that Israel gets in the media. We see the many groups and influencers that make excuses. How could you make excuse to behead a baby? How could you make an excuse to rape? How do you make excuse to take an elderly woman and kidnap her? What sort of world do we live in? Who are these people? But then we look at the many friends and those who sympathize with Israel and the Jewish people. For every hater, there are many lovers. Thank God there are many good people out there who have the moral clarity and common sense to differentiate between good and evil. People who understand the lesson of history. They know that Israel's just a canary in the coal mine. And what starts with terror against the Jews never ends up with just the Jews. Eventually they go after everyone and everything good and decent. How many 9/11s do you need? How many attacks in the U.S. embassies and missiles from Iran proxies will the world realize that this is not a war against the Jewish people? Israel is just a small Satan, and America and Western culture is the great Satan. I suggest that Israel is the ultimate Rorschach test. The way people view Israel vice Hamas tells us a lot about their morality. Would you really like to live in a world where if your daughter is raped, your grandmother is killed, your aunt is taken hostage, and you or your government can't do anything about it and has to wait for the next time they do it because they're going to do it and they'll do it worse? Is that the world we want to create for ourselves? There's no country that abhors or detests war more than Israel. The Jewish people pray 3 times a day, Oseh Shalom Bimromav, may God bring peace upon us. But what can you do when you're surrounded by people who seek to destroy us. We have no other choice. Roll over and die? Golda Meir famously once said, if the Arabs would put down their weapons, there will be peace. If Israelis put down their weapons, there will be no Israel. If one thing we could learn from tonight's talk, it's that never again is not a slogan. It has to mean something. Esther's daughter, who's not here tonight, Rachel, explaining why she and her mother go around the country and speak. And she said, Mom and I want to teach and reach as many people as we can so this will never happen again. Well, my friends, the test of never happen again is today. Unlike the 30s and 40s, we were blessed with an army. And we have a moral obligation to use it. Some may not like it, but something we have learned is we prefer to be alive than liked. We're not going to allow them to take us back to the dark ages. This time, we're not taking the acts of genocide lying down. As we often say, Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish nation continues to live. But there was also positive things that October 7th has awakened. In the past 8 weeks, us at Chabad Spokane have received countless of phone calls of support, cards of support. We have seen a heightened involvement of Jews and reconnection with their Judaism. We have seen people who have been inspired to act, to do goodness and kindness in honor of Israel. It's time like this that I'm reminded what my mentor, the Lubavitch Rebbe, said, that the best way to combat darkness and evil is by bringing light, by acts of goodness and kindness. It's an appropriate time to reconnect to those 7 Noahide laws, which mandate a principled behaviors of morality, decency, honesty, justice, compassionate, and a God-fearing society that cherishes the sanctity of life. My friends, Esther Basch, the honey girl of Auschwitz. She may be physically short and soft-spoken, but spiritually, she's a giant with a powerful message. I hope tonight's story will inspire us and motivate us to do whatever we can to combat lies with truth, hate with love, the cruelty with compassion, and darkness with light. And may we merit the day that there will be no longer evil in this world, and a world where all of God's children could live side by side in good health, security, peace, and tranquility. A nation will not lift a sword against a nation. We shall no longer know of war, the times of Mashiach. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome our guest speaker from Prescott, Arizona, Esther Basch.
Okay, you want to say something? Okay, so I was born in the Carpathian Mountains. When my mom was born in the same town, it was Hungary. When I was born, it was Czechoslovakia. But then the Hungarians came back in 1938, and then in 1942, the Nazis took over our town, and that was the end of the Jewish population. Next day, we had to wear this yellow Star of David, and whoever wanted to beat us up or anything. You see, my father, who was a rabbi, had a long beard. They were pulling on his beard until blood was coming out. He had to go home and cut off his beard, which was very traumatic for a rabbi. And so it went on for 2 years. We were tortured mercilessly. The neighbors who were our friends, next day we are dirty Jews. I, as a 14-year-old girl, did not understand how I was clean yesterday and today I'm dirty. But it happened, and I lost all my Christian friends, and the Nazis were torturing us mercilessly for 2 years. Then they decided to put us into a ghetto. They made a square of 4 streets, and they put all the Jewish people in there, including the people from the vicinity, and we were there for 6 weeks. But before we got into the ghetto, they told us to go to the synagogue, the main synagogue in my hometown. They told us to take all our quilts and pillows in one suitcase. When we got into the synagogue, they took all the pillows, tore them apart. The synagogue became like a snowstorm because the quilts and the pillows were feathers. And so it was very traumatic. I still have nightmares from that experience. And so they were taking us into the ghetto, tortured mercilessly, no food, no water, and we were taken straight to the house right across from the house that we lived. I was watching the neighbors from my right taking everything we had, our chickens, geese, the cow we had, but the neighbor from the left risked his life calling out my father's name in the middle of the night so he can throw over a piece of bread because he knew we were starving. And so if he would have been caught, he would have been shot on the spot. But he risked his life. I'm just saying that there are good people in this world also, and not so good. Anyways, we were in the ghetto for 6 weeks when the Nazis decided to take us on a train. Actually, that was in a cattle car. 500 people pushed into one cattle car. We had no room to sit down even. We had to stand up. If somebody died on the road, we had to hold him up because there was no room for him to lay down. And I was still holding very strongly hands with my mom because she was crying that she was hiding from the Nazis an egg a week because my 16th birthday was coming up. So I was holding her hand while she was crying, and we were in that cattle car for days and days until we wound up in Auschwitz. We got off the train. Right away, they took my father to the right, which later finding out straight to the gas chambers. I was still holding hands with my mom very strongly when a Nazi came, tore our hands apart, threw my mom to the right, and took me into the barracks. I was there for 3.5 months, being tortured mercilessly. We had to stay in line, 5 women in a row, and we had to be counted every morning and every night. We had to stay in line, whether it was snowstorm or anything, we just had to stay in line. And one day, Dr. Mengele, I don't know if anybody heard of him, he was called the Angel of Death. He was walking every day the line, taking out women, whomever he wanted, either for experiment or to the gas chambers. One day he's standing in line right in front of mine, and he points this horrible silver cane that he had at the people that he wanted to take out. So it looked to me, when he stood in front of my line, that he's pointing that horrible cane at me. So I stay out of the line, and he takes that cane, pushes it into my belly button, but so bad that up till today, I have nightmares from it, and my belly button hurts terrible. And he pushes me back and takes out my best friend and takes her away. When we went back to the barracks, this mean capo hollers out, "Does anyone here has family that Mengele was took away?" And the 3 remaining sisters says, "Yes, our little sister was taken away." And this mean capo points to the gas chambers, to the chimneys, and says, "You see the chimney smoking? That's where your little sister is." Up till today, I have guilt feelings because I thought I was supposed to be there. And so we were tortured mercilessly, sometimes so badly that I went to the barbed wire to touch it because I knew it was with electricity, and if I touch it, I won't suffer anymore. But in front of me came my parents' faces, and I couldn't touch it. What if they're alive and I'm not? And this went on for 3.5 months until the Nazis decided one day to take women to labor camp. So the barracks had no doors. They put an incredibly heavy barrier towards the door, left a little opening, and they looked at us, and whomever they felt could go to work, took them away, and whom not, pushed them straight away, later finding out straight to the gas chambers. So as we're standing in line, they pushed in my best friend. We were like sisters. and they pushed me away. So I'm standing there and crying. Now I lost my so-called sister too. As I'm standing there and crying, all of a sudden this unbelievably incredible heavy barrier fell over and I snuck into the barrack. I wanted to be with my so-called sister. And as I went into the barrack, of course, I wasn't chosen to go to work, and that's why I don't have a tattoo, because I wasn't supposed to be there. But in the meantime, they took my so-called sister away, and I went to a different labor camp. I was there for 9.5 months and working in an ammunition factory. I had to solder handles to the mine that they threw into the ocean. Many times I was working like 12 hours a day. Every 2 weeks the shift changed and I had to work 24 hours. So many times I soldered my fingers to the handles. So that's why I don't have any fingerprints. But the United States was kind enough to give me a United States visa anyways. I could have been a criminal, but but the United States were kind enough to give me a visa.
So, Esther,
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about some of the other things that happened in the labor camps that you were, the various ones that you were in, including
Yes.
the women that you interacted with, and any miracles or kindnesses that were shown to you?
Yes, yes. I feel there was one miracle. You see, we had to stay in line for our food, although it was a little better than in Auschwitz, but we had to stay in line. And one day, as I'm standing in line, in front of me comes a woman. Her name was Ilonka, and I see that her bowl is already dirty. So I start arguing with her. Listen, I see your bowl is dirty and I didn't have any food yet. And she says, yes, but I'm still hungry. And we were arguing back and forth. When a Nazi came, she didn't understand what we were arguing about, but she decided to beat me up mercilessly, so bad that I had to crawl back into my bunk bed. I couldn't get up next morning. I couldn't get up for quite a few days. But we had a good couple in the labor camp, and when she saw I can't get up, she went to work for me because she knew if the count is not correct, they're going to come and look for me and take me back to Auschwitz. So she went to work for me, so the count could be correct. And so she saved my life. Later, years and years later, we were already in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm finding out there was a new bakery in our street, and my husband and I were walking, and he says, let's go in see if we can afford something. We go in, and there was Brian, the woman that saved my life, and I holler out Branya, and my husband hollers out Branya, because where he was brought up, they were very good friends. And it was really wonderful. And she gave us some cookies, and we didn't have to pay for it. Anyways, and so after 9.5 months in the labor camp, the American soldiers started coming forward. So the Nazis took us what they called a death march, because many of us died on the road. No food, no water, just walking and walking till we wound up in another labor camp. And that's where I found my so-called sister. We were very happy, but the Nazis locked us in and disappeared. 2 weeks later, the American soldiers came, shut open the gate, and said, "You are free." And we didn't understand a word. We didn't speak English, but till they found us a Jewish soldiers that told us in Jewish, "You are free, and go into town and take whatever you like." I didn't want anything. I thought I'm gonna go home, find my parents, everything. But I picked up a big, big jar of honey. I licked it up with my fingers. By the time I got back to the camp, I was deathly ill. And the soldiers took me to the infirmary for 6 weeks to bring me back to health. And they called me the honey girl. Years and years later, you see, when my great-granddaughter, who is today 19, was 2 years old, and this little girl went with my daughter and her mom to a 4th of July celebration. This little girl, 2 years old, had tears in her eyes. She had no idea what they were celebrating, but she was so emotional about it. And my daughter comes home and tells me about it. And I says to her, "Did I ever tell you about my first 4th of July? You see, the soldiers liberated us April 14 of 1945, but they were there until September to bring us back to health, because we were like skeletons. And so they celebrated 4th of July. I had no idea what they were celebrating, but I was so emotional, I had tears in my eyes. And when my daughter came home telling me about my great-granddaughter, I says, "Rachel, did I ever tell you about my first 4th of July? I had no idea what they were celebrating, but I was so emotional, I had tears in my eyes." And I tell her if I would ever meet an American soldier that liberated my camp, how happy I would be. She got on the internet. She did not rest until she found me one. He lived in New Mexico, near Albuquerque, and when he heard about a Holocaust survivor in Phoenix, he got into his car, He was already 89 years old. He drove all the way to Phoenix to meet me. And we became best of friends. He came to Phoenix often. We went to Albuquerque, and it was wonderful. And when we went to Albuquerque, he invited all his friends. And one day we're sitting and socializing, and he looks at me and says, "Esther, do you like honey?" I says, "Not anymore."
And what was his name?
His name was Max Lieber. This is his picture. Yeah. Beautiful, wonderful, wonderful man. Very caring.
And what did you think when the soldiers first came to the camp to shoot off the logs?
Oh.
What did you think then?
We were horrified because there were uniforms again until they found us a Jewish soldier telling us in Jewish that you are free and go into town and help yourself to whatever you want. But I picked up that jar of honey, and by the time I got back to the camp, I was deathly ill, and the American soldiers brought me back to health, and they called me the honey girl because I got sick from the honey.
Which is why the documentary that we are making about her is called The Honey Girl.
Yeah. Anyways, years and years later, when I found Max, and we were sitting in his house socializing, and when he looks at me, he says, "Esther, do you like honey?" I says, "Not anymore." And he says, "I know why. You're the honey girl." And this is why my documentary is called The Honey Girl.
And Esther, just before we go much further, why is it that you're traveling around the country to speak? And what audiences do you generally speak to?
Well, I speak to everyone. I go to a lot of high schools, and they sending me such beautiful thank you notes telling me Mrs. Basch will make sure that it'll never happen again. And I believe it. I believe in God very strongly. And you see, I don't have anything of my of my parents, not even a picture. But what I have is what they taught me. To be good. If you can't do anything good, don't do anything bad. Love all people, regardless of race or religion. Love God. Forgive. Think positive, and you'll have a happy life. And this is how I live my life. You see, when Steven Spielberg made that movie Schindler's List, he took all the proceeds from that movie and sent out people from Hollywood to Holocaust survivors to see who wants to make a tape of their life. And my husband and I made a tape. And when the woman from Hollywood finished my story, she says, "Esther, how do you feel about the Germans today?" I says, "Well, I cannot forget the horror they put me through, but I can forgive. Because if I don't forgive, if I hold a grudge, I only hurt myself." This woman from Hollywood hugged me, telling me I was the first Holocaust survivor answer her the way I did. And I believe it. I believe very strongly in God. I believe strongly in forgiveness and love people, and regardless of race or religion, think positive and you'll have a happy life.
Yes, very good.
Yes.
And can you talk to us a little bit about what happened after you were liberated?
Yes. After we were liberated, you see, I don't speak Czechoslovakian, but on my birth certificate, I'm Czechoslovakian. And the Czech people took their Jewish people home first. So they put me on a ship to Prague, and from Prague, they took me on a train to Budapest, the capital of Hungary. And when I got off in Budapest of the train, I had to take another train to my hometown. So when I got off the train, the only cousin that survived of a family of 35 people came to the train station every day because he was liberated first. So he was coming to see who's coming home, and I got off the train. He was very happy to see me, but he says, Esther, no use for you to go home. Nobody left. The Russians even took over your house, so you've nowhere to go. But we have an uncle in Palestine, and I have a very good friend who's taking orphans from the camps towards Palestine between ages of 12 and 18. I was 17. He introduced me to him, and we fell in love right away. By the time we got to Israel, to Palestine, Rachel was born 2 weeks later. We got married in a displaced persons where the United Nations was taking care of us, and the American soldiers were asked. And when we realized it's going to take a long, long time to get to Palestine, we decided to get married in a displaced persons camp.
And how did you find out that you were pregnant? Tell this story.
Well, you see, after 3 months, and we were married 3 months, and a woman next door bought a bicycle. So I asked her to loan it to me because I wanted to show off my new husband that I know how to ride a bicycle. As I'm hollering, Joe, Joe, I fell down and I broke my knees. And they took me to the infirmary, and I threw up. And the German nurse says, are you pregnant? I didn't understand German. So they took me up to the 3rd floor where there was a Hungarian doctor. And he says, you know you're pregnant? And I says, why? How? He looks at my finger. See, the United Nations gave us a very thin wedding band. And he looks at my finger and he says, you're married, right? I says, yes, so. He says, so? That's why you're pregnant. What do you think you were doing? I says, well, I just thought I'm having fun. So, anyways, yeah. By the time I got back to the organization and they realized I'm pregnant, they decided to trying to take me to Palestine. But we couldn't go straight. We had to go to France. We stayed there for 6 months until we finally got the Canadian visa. We stayed there for 6 years until we finally got the United States visa. And I'm very, very proud to be a United States citizen. Thank you. So,
Esther, could you talk a little bit about what kind of response you got from the local people when you were going through France, Canada, and eventually, how were you received in those countries?
well, we were received wonderful, wonderful. And many of our neighbors treated us beautiful. And it was great. It was great. And we went to live in Windsor, Ontario, which was on the border of the United States. So my father-in-law used to come every Sunday. All he had to do is cross the bridge or the tunnel because he lived in Toledo, Ohio. So he used to come every Sunday. And
So, in addition to your being in occupied country, did you experience anti-Semitism in other countries along the way?
well, actually, I did not really, but my daughter did. She was 6 years old, and she went to school, and she was the only Jewish child in school.
And
You
what
see,
country was this in?
in Canada.
Canada.
And so it came the Day of Atonement, the Jewish holiday, and I was still religious then. So I told my daughter to tell the teacher that she cannot attend on the Day of Atonement. And all the rest of the children heard it. Next day, she was beaten up. She was called a dirty Jew. They were telling her that you are drinking the Christian baby's blood, and where are your horns? She was tortured mercilessly, but she never told us. How she used to come home black and blue, and I'm telling her, Rachel, what happened? And she says she fell down. And I believed her. I really, because I never experienced any hatred anywhere else again.
And did you ever meet any of the other people that were in the camps with you later on,
Well,
other than the
actually,
bakery?
yeah.
And
In Canada, I was working in Canada already. I had 3 children. 2 of them were in a carriage because they were 15 months apart. And as I'm walking the street, all of a sudden I see a woman holding herself and running away. And I holler after her, Ilonka, where are you running? This was the woman. Because of her, I was beaten up mercilessly. And she says, You mean you're not gonna beat me up? I says, why should I? You were hungry, I was hungry, but now we have both a belly full, and we became the best of friends. We lived there for 6 years. She took care of my children when I went shopping. I took care of her children, and it was a wonderful life. But I was very, very happy when we finally came to the United States.
Very good.
Yes.
And before I forget, in addition to you traveling the country to make people aware of the truth, is there another part of this that is part of your mission in speaking with people with regards to maybe politics?
Yeah, well, you see, I'm not good in politics. I don't, I'm just happy. That's
Yes.
all there is to it. But I forgot to show you my wedding picture. This is my wedding picture.
You have to
You see?
hold the mic close to your mouth.
When we got married in the displaced persons camp, the American soldiers gave us these jackets. They gave us a blanket because we were wearing army jeans. A bride shouldn't wear army jeans. So they gave us a blanket for the girls in the organization to sew me a skirt. And the boys in the organization sold their rations of cigarettes for a month to buy me a piece of white material. After all, a bride should wear something white. So this is my wedding picture. Thank you very much. So anyways, we live very happy. I have a wonderful life. You know,
Do you travel quite frequently then?
a lot.
On
I
all over the
travel
country?
all over the country because I feel it's very important that it should never happen again. You see, I go to speak to many, many high school students, and they're sending me such beautiful thank you notes telling me, Mrs. Basch will make sure that this will never happen again. And I believe them. I believe them.
And what are some of the things you do for fun these days at 95 years old?
But is it?
What are some of the things you like to do for fun
Oh,
at this point in your life?
I like to go dancing. I like to go listen to music. All the young men asking me to dance, and I'm happy. I'm very, very happy. And you see, I get a very, very small compensation from Germany. And I take that money from the Germans and I'm giving it to the Indians
At the
at the casino.
casino.
Anyways, and so I live a happy life. Yes.
Very good.
Is there anything else?
Let's see here. I think you've covered just about everything. We did mention that we're making a documentary. I've been working with Esther on it for about 4 years, and it's all grassroots fundraising so that we can get a professional film done. And yes, we've been working on it for about 4 years. We have business cards if you'd like to go to the website. It's called honeygirlfilms, plural.org. And there you can see a preview of how far we've gotten thus far. We're still in the middle of fundraising, so any little bit that you can do to help us out and get to the finish line on this, we sure would appreciate it. Our goal with this is to hopefully get it picked up by a streaming service or somebody like PBS. And then also afterwards, we'd like to have an educational curriculum built around the documentary that can be brought into schools.
Yes, yes. You see, I don't want any money from anybody. I just would like to see the documentary and take all the proceeds and giving it to education. And I find that very important to me. And so,
So if you'd like a business card before you leave, just come and hunt us down in a nice way. And
yeah. And
also you can go to the website.
if you have any questions, please feel free, and I'll be happy to answer it.
Okay, you're done with the questions? Okay, so we're going to open the next part of tonight's program to some questions and answers. I didn't get a lot of questions prior to the event, but is there a Ethan Hayward here? Is there Ethan Hayward? Anyone? Ethan? 13-year-old boy? Here, you want to come and ask a question? See, we're always honored when the children or students have a question. Okay, so if you want, you could stand here where you could see her, okay? Okay, so ask your question. Just introduce yourself as well.
Yes, yes, dear.
All right, hi, I'm Ethan Hayward, and I was just wondering, I was wondering whether, how you felt after after it was all over, kind of.
What did you feel like when World War II was officially ended?
Yeah, that's.
It felt wonderful, wonderful. You see, yes. I was never bitter about anything. You see, in Auschwitz, many times we were walking the streets and 99.5% of the women said, there is no God. How can he look down at this horror and do nothing? I never, ever believed it. I believed always there is a God. I put my faith in his hands, and I live a very happy life for that. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Okay, if you have any questions, I'm going to do this again. Please only I'm going to give you my cell phone number. Text me questions. What happens is I get flooded by a few hundred questions. So, but only nothing inappropriate, please, because it is my cell phone. Okay, so please, if you have a question, 509, you could put this and you could text me a question. I'll filter the questions I think are best or have the greatest value. 509-990-7878. Again, 509-990-7878. If you could send me your question, and I will share it with Esther. Okay, a question. Have you been back to your hometown since?
No, never. If they didn't want me there, I don't want to go there. Simple. Yeah.
Okay. Another question they ask, was your husband a Holocaust survivor?
Yes. He wasn't in Auschwitz, but he was in labor camps. And just so you know the difference, you see, I was liberated by the American soldiers. They did not rest until we were all healthy. They fed us 3 times a day, tapioca pudding, because they wanted us to be healthy again. On the other hand, my husband was liberated by the Russians. He could hardly walk. He was in typhoid fever already, and he couldn't even walk anymore. And when the Russians came in and liberated his camp, he begged one of the soldiers, "Please help me. I'm a Jew, and I can't even get up." And this Russian soldier says, "So what? I'm a Jew too. I help myself, you help yourself." And he left them there to die until he finally crawled and crawled. He wound up in a German farm. When the Germans saw that, they brought him back into the house and brought him back to health. He was there like for 3-4 months until he was able to go home to his parents, to his father. Yeah.
Okay, Esther, somebody wants to dance with you, so I think I'm going to respond.
Oh, okay.
$1,800 for her movie. I take finder's fee. Okay. Okay. Some of the questions. So Esther, some of the questions that you could skip any questions, but there's a few questions I wanted to know about food in Auschwitz. How often and what was it like? What, I guess portions. I don't know. So just elaborate as far as.
What we did in Auschwitz. The food. They gave us a black coffee in the morning, and towards the evening, they gave us a piece of bread, which I couldn't eat for weeks because it tasted like sawdust. I think it was made out of sawdust. So I couldn't even eat it, and this is how I wound up like a skeleton after 3.5 months. And that's why I was not selected to go to work. But the food in the labor camp was a little better. And they gave us a meal lunchtime and a meal towards the evening. So they wanted us to work. So we had to, yeah.
What did the meal consist of?
Some soup for lunch with a little vegetables. Not the potatoes, but the potato skin. They ate the potatoes and they put in the soup the skin. But we were so hungry, we ate whatever they gave us. And in the evening, a piece of bread, which tasted a little better than in Auschwitz. They wanted to make sure we can work. So they gave us a little better food. And so, yeah.
Esther, what gave you hope while you were in labor camp?
Because I believed in God very, very strongly. And I knew that God will help me. And I wasn't thinking of how I'm suffering. I was just thinking soon I'm going to be liberated and I'm going to have a happy life again. I was sure I'm going to find my parents. Sorry to say that did not happen. but I was a very happy person after the camps. I was sad in the camps. I'm not saying that I was happy, but I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking how I'm being beaten up for nothing. For nothing. Just they wanted me to hear that I'm crying, and they were laughing. So, but it was a very, very dark place for us. I wasn't the only one. Many Jewish women, because I was in a women's camp. And so all I was thinking, soon, I'm going to be liberated and go home and have a happy life again. And I am very happy, very happy. Brought up 4 beautiful children, brought up other people's 4 children. First 2 boys, 2 beautiful boys. I was so in love with them, and they loved me. Yes. And then when they went off to school, then I took care of twins, and they're still in my life, just like you guys are in my life. And I'll never, ever will forget you guys. Never.
Esther, one more or a few more questions. What are the 3 most important things you've learned in your life? Okay, we're putting you on the spot, so whatever
Well-
you come up with.
Well-
You could skip this one if you wish.
Okay. I just learned that I have to be good, that I have to love people, regardless of race or religion, and love God, and think positive, and you'll have a happy life. I leave all the tortures behind me. I don't think about it. I just think about being happy. And I am. And I am.
Esther, what was your home like before the Holocaust? I guess the life
Oh,
before.
Yeah, it was wonderful. We were very, very poor, but we were very, very happy. I didn't need it much. You know, my father was a rabbi. He made very, very little money, although he also taught the boys their bar mitzvah lessons in Hebrew, and he got a little extra money for that. But he had to go to collect the money every month from the parents. So he went into one house, collected his money. When he went into the next house, he saw how poor they were. He left his money there. Many times he came home empty-handed. And I still hear my mom's voice saying, "Well, Morris, what are we going to do now?" And Morris's answer was always the same. "Don't worry, Fanny. God will provide." Sure enough, I don't ever remember going hungry. I didn't have all the fancy clothes that some of my friends had, but I didn't need it. I didn't have it. I didn't need it. And I still live the same way. As long as I have my piece of bread and my butter, and if I can smear it a little more butter, I'm very, very happy. Yes. Thank you.
Esther, you remind me of a joke that was once this prospect son-in-law that came to meet his father-in-law. And the father-in-law interviews the son, and he says, and his future son-in-law, he wants to know. He asks him, "Tell me." And when he comes back, he asks his wife, asked him how it was. So he said, "Well, I started asking him. I asked him how he's going to support my daughter. He said, God will provide." He said, "How are you going to, she's used to a nice home. Do you have a job?" He says, "Don't worry about it. God will provide." So when he was done, he told his wife, this guy is a schlamazel, loosely translated, a loser. But the good news is, he thinks I'm God. Okay, have you ever been back to Auschwitz?
Oh no, oh no. I wouldn't go there. You see, when sometimes I see a movie or something, I'll never forget that slogan that was right in front of the door as you go into Auschwitz, and it says in German, Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes you free. And I just cannot forget that slogan as long as I live. When I have nightmares, I see that slogan. How can they say that work makes you free? We worked like slaves. We were not free. We were not free. But thank God, today I'm free, and today I'm happy. And that's all that matters.
Esther, there's a few questions about God.
About what?
About God.
God.
God, they want to know, like, for example, there's a question here. What was your biggest question you had to God at the time? Or in general, the relationship with God in prospect of...
Well, as I say, I just believe so strongly in God that I never, ever question him. You see how many times in Auschwitz we were walking the street and they all said there is no God. I never, ever believed that. God has a purpose for me. I feel for everybody, and that's how I live my life.
I'm going to
My
repeat your
prayers?
question. What was your prayers like?
Well, I just pick, please God, help us. Please God, make sure we'll survive this horror. And that's what I was praying. You see, I was still very religious, even in Auschwitz. And so the Nazis knew that came the Day of Atonement, they were giving us that little piece of bread. I don't know if I should call it bread or sawdust. They gave it to us, and when it was already, the stars were out, because they knew whoever is still religious is not going to eat it. And I was still a little religious, so I took that piece of bread and put it under my head, hoping next day I'm going to have a double portion. It never happened. Somebody took it away from under my head. You would think that, God, how did you let this happen? I never questioned him. Never, ever, ever. In 95 years of my life, I believe very strongly. I'm not religious anymore. Shall I say I love bacon? But
You know,
I believe in God.
I have a
Very, very
non-rabbinic
slow.
appropriate to the times joke. Should I share? So I say, so in today's, hopefully this will go off well. Okay, in the survey I'll give you could comment if you don't like this joke. I tell all my Gentile friends, you hear Esther, ham you could eat, but ham ass, no way.
He's telling a joke.
Okay, not everyone liked the joke. Okay. Okay. In the darkest moments in your life, in the ghetto, in Auschwitz, in the other labor camps, have you witnessed any kindness, any?
Well, the only kindness, the only thing is when this capo, Branya, saved my life. If she wouldn't have gone to work for me, I wouldn't be here today. And that I felt was such a kind thing for her to do. She didn't have to go to work. She was in the, in the block, what do they call it, in the house where we stayed the night. And she was there at the daytime doing nothing. But when she saw that I can't go to work, she saved my life. And I am very, very grateful for that. I'm very grateful to God for that.
Can I ask you a few questions just about your life before the Holocaust? Like, you said you grew up very poor.
Yes.
So today in our American culture, poor is like I can't buy I don't have my laptop, the internet is slow. This is like a poor. So the poor of yesteryears are very different.
Yeah.
And we don't understand what that means. And the villages, did you live in a village or a city?
Actually, it was the city, it was the main city, the main town in my vicinity.
How many siblings did you have?
I'm sorry?
Did you have any siblings, brothers?
No.
You were the only child.
Yes, to my mom. My father had 2 sons from his previous marriage, but I didn't know them until I got to Palestine. Is when my uncle tells me, your brothers are coming too? And I says, what brothers? They came to visit us, but I had so many cousins, I thought they're my cousins too. Nobody told me they're my brothers. So when they were on the road to Palestine, they knew about me, and they were arguing they each wanted to take care of their baby sister. In the meantime, I show up with my baby of my own. And that was very funny. And so we became such good brothers and sisters, and it was wonderful. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of questions that kind of relate to these kind of, the question I'm going to ask. And part of what I've learned from the audience that comes here is that they get a lot of inspiration from these kind of questions. How did people living in the labor camp keep each other's spirits up? If we could address the question, what do they, is there some sort of way they would give each other comfort?
Not really. Everybody was miserable. Everybody was miserable, and everybody was just a little selfish. They didn't want to give nothing of themselves. I was on the other hand, I made friends because I felt the need to be with a friend. So I made a friend in Auschwitz, And because of her, I'm here. Because if she wouldn't have been selected to go to work, I wouldn't have been interested to sneak into the barrack, you see. And so I had a few friends, but I tried to comfort them. They didn't know how to comfort me because they were miserable. Everybody has different thinking. Everybody has different way of life. I feel I have a life. I want to live happily. That's all there is to it. Yeah.
Esther, how could we ensure that this never ever happens again?
Well, we really cannot be sure. We can only hope. And I have all the hope, and I have every reason to believe that it will not happen again. But we don't know. We're just hoping. We're just hoping. Yes.
Okay, have you ever met a former Nazi?
No. Who? Oh, yes, I did meet a former Nazi, former neo-Nazi. You see, when we started doing this project, the documentary, we were sitting in a restaurant having coffee with the people that are going to do the project. You know, like Lori, and the photographer, the writer, and there was this woman sitting with them, and all of a sudden, she starts crying. So I hold her hand, please don't cry. And she says, yes, forgive me. I says, there is nothing to forgive. I didn't understand it till she tells me she was a neo-Nazi when she was a youngster. So I hold her hands and telling her, listen, you were a young woman, a young girl. You didn't know what you were doing. But now that you're a grown woman, and I see that you care, and I believe you, and we became very good friends with a Nazi, former Nazi, yes. And
What? Okay,
she's
this
in
is,
my documentary, too.
this is a little bit off. What's your favorite food besides matzo ball soup?
Salmon.
Cooked salmon. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay, good.
Yes,
She had some of my wife's salmon. Okay.
that's my favorite color, purple. As
We
you
could give it
can
to you for
see.
breakfast again. Breakfast. Okay.
But
Okay, I have a 2.5-year-old girl that wants to know what would you tell your 2.5-year-old old self? That's a complicated question.
what is it? Didn't hear that.
What would you tell a youngster, a young girl? What's the message you would want her to hear?
Just to be happy, just follow the happy road and think positive, and you'll have a happy life. It's very important not to think of the past, not to think of the horrors. Simple, very simple.
Okay. Did you ever meet Corey Ten Boom? I don't know who's at it. Corey Ten Boom? Who's at it? Okay.
But I heard of her, yeah. Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these questions were answered already. Esther, what's your most prized possession?
My children and the boys that I used to take care of. I cannot forget them either. They're still in my life. And just, that's my pride and joy.
How many children do you have altogether?
Millions.
In Prescott, we call her mom. Everyone calls her mom.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is kind of ends the conversation. You should know like half the questions, they wanted to know what's your favorite food. I think the cafeteria is still open if anyone's still hungry. Okay, I have like 5 questions. What's your favorite food now? What's your favorite food later? Okay.
She does love chocolate.
Love chocolate. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Esther, your husband fought in the independence war for Israel.
Yes.
So he was, we can say that he was from the people who founded Israel with his body. He was from the people who established Israel with his body by fighting for Israel.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's see. Would you like to share a few words about Israel?
Well, the only thing I can share is Israel is my home. You see, when we got out of the camps and we went to Israel, I felt at home. I wasn't afraid of uniforms. I wasn't afraid when I saw a gun. I was terrified of the guns or of uniforms, but in dogs, you see, I had to watch people taking apart. Dogs were taking apart people in Auschwitz. I was terrified of dogs for years and years. But one day, my son got a little puppy, and I got very sick. And he calls me up, he says, "Mom, just bought a little puppy, and I would like to come and see you, but I can't leave the puppy home alone. I'll bring her along, and I'll just hold her in my lap." I wanted to see my son, so I says, okay. He comes in with this cute little puppy, sits down by where I'm laying on the couch. This little puppy puts out her little tongue, and my son says, "Ma, this was a kiss." I says, "Really?" He says, give her a little pet and see what she's gonna do. I'm trying shakily trying to give her a little pet. This little puppy puts out her little tongue again. And my son says, "Ma, she loves you." I says, "Really?" I gave her another pet and another pet. Before I knew it, I fell in love with that puppy. And I used to take her for a walk. And it was wonderful. I got out of the nightmares about dogs. Got out of the nightmares when David got his puppy too. And I'll never forget it. Can I just say one little thing? One day, these lovely people I babysat for the boys. Yeah. And anyways, the mama asked me one day, she says she knows I'm afraid of dogs, but if I'll be afraid, she's going to take Buck, was his name, to her parents. I said, okay. And actually, I liked Buck a lot. But one day, somebody knocks on the door, and little David, who must have been by then maybe 6 years old, he sees me shaking, and he hugs me, and he says, Esther, should we call an adult? And I look at him, oh my God, I'm an adult. I says, no, David, I'm not afraid, but I was shaking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you so much for your presentation. I can't go through all the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. A Holocaust survivors feel so good when I see how people cares. It warms my heart. Thank you so very much for caring.
Thank you so much. We're about to conclude tonight's program. I want to apologize for all the questions that I wasn't able to answer. If you don't mind just holding back till we're done with tonight's program, we would really appreciate it. If you have to leave, do me a favor, leave the card, the survey card on one of the tables or with one of our volunteers. I just want to share just a few brief remarks, and then we'll have a video and another musical. If you could please wait till we're done, we would really appreciate it. I want to thank again our sponsors of tonight, Avista Foundation and Novia Foundation, Washington Trust, for co-sponsoring tonight's event. And again, thank the Davenport Grand Hotel for sponsoring the hospitality, and Black Ambassador Limo for sponsoring the transportation again. I want to share really briefly one of the reasons why I continue to bring Holocaust survivors is because of you guys, because of the inspiration I see that they bring to your life and how meaningful it is to people who come and hear their stories. And that's the main reason why we will continue while there's someone alive who's able to travel to Spokane. I'm committed to bring those survivors here. Because if we could change someone's life and inspire them to live life to the fullest by hearing the survivor story, it's on us to bring them here. Just a few brief things. A plug for Chabad of Spokane. Hanukkah, there's a Jewish holiday coming up. You're all welcome to join our Hanukkah menorah lighting next week, Sunday, at Riverfront Park Rotary Fountain, by the Rotary Fountain at 5 p.m., followed by a party/concert, and you could go to jewishspokane.com and RSVP. There's limited seating. Those of you who, if you need Hanukkah menorah, Hanukkah candles, and if you need any Hanukkah supplies, you could, again, go to jewishspokane.com. There's a table with candles outside. And if you need any of those supplies, I'm happy to provide them for you. On those little cards, those of you who want to learn a Jewish perspective, don't worry, you won't become Jewish out of it. You'll just gain some insight. You'll see in the little card there is a course coming up. You're welcome to try that first class for free. And I'm going to send out an email to you with a survey. If you could fill it out, I would be very grateful. In order to encourage you, I'm going to raffle off just a small token appreciation, $100, so you could buy a free coffee or something, whatever you could buy with $100 nowadays. Okay. One last thing. A lot of people have asked me how they could support Israel. We do have families that are displaced, that we are sending directly funds to those who need those funds badly. You could reach out to me and I could send you a link. Again, I want to thank very much Esther for coming, and thank you so much, Lori, for coming in the last minute and joining us. We're going to conclude tonight's event with a video followed by 2 musical presentations. Okay.
Dark clouds began to cover the skies of Europe, the clouds of Nazism. And as they invaded Warsaw, they moved Jews, men, women, and children into the ghettos. Slowly, over time, the ghettos began to empty. Even the birds stopped singing, as if they knew what came next. The trains of doom filled with the innocent and the pure, carrying them to their deaths. And it was on one such train headed to the death camp Treblinka, in the midst of the terror, the gasping, the weeping, and the despair, that a lone voice was heard singing. His name was Azriel David Fastig, the cantor of the saintly Mosnitzer Rebbe, Rabbi Shaul Yedidya Elisar. People thought he had lost his mind, but Azriel's heavenly and sweet voice continued its soulful tune. There he was, face aglow, eyes squeezed tight with concentration, fixated upon the words of one of the 13 principles of the Jewish faith, Ani Ma'amin. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of Mashiach, the final redemption. Gradually, the hundreds of listening ears joined his song, at first quietly, but slowly growing louder and louder. Soon the song spread from car to car, and every mouth that could still draw a breath joined in Azriel's haunting melody, Ani Ma'amin. His eyes red from crying and his cheeks wet with tears, Cantor Fastig tore a piece off of his own shirt and jotted down the notes of his new composition. There he proclaimed, I will give half my share in the world to come to the person who will take my song to my saintly teacher, the Mosnitzer Rebbe, who had escaped to the shores of the United States. A hushed silence descended upon the train, and 2 young men appeared, promising to bring the song to the Rebbe at any cost. Bidding farewell to their brothers and sisters, they jumped out of a hole they broke in the train's roof. One miraculously survived, and clutching dearly to the shirt, kept the melody alive. It was on Yom Kippur, just after the war, on the holiest day on the Jewish calendar, and the Mosnitzer Rebbe's synagogue in New York was filled with thousands upon thousands. As the Rebbe began singing the Ani Ma'amin, the crowd wept bitterly, swaying back and forth as if in a different world. He trembled and declared, on their journey to the gas chambers, this song was born from the ashes of millions, and it will be with this song that the Jewish people will march as they greet Moshiach, the final redemption.
Ani
They're about to sing. They're about to play one more song. We're going to conclude with Oseh Shalom. I'm going to try to sing, so bear with me. Oseh Shalom is the prayer we pray that God will make peace in heavens. He will also make peace here below. If you know this song, you could sing along with me. I do want to share with you, I forgot to mention this earlier. It was brought to my attention that a survivor of the massacre that just took place in Israel is coming to speak in the Northwest. They may come to speak here. I will let you guys know if you want to come to that event. I'll probably be in touch with you via email. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'yimeru, amen. Shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'yimeru, amen. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Thank you so much, everyone. I want to wish you all a wonderful evening, and I hope that we could take to heart the lessons we learned from tonight's evening and let it impact on our life to bring peace and happiness and joy in our lives and in our community. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for coming. Okay, if you do have a contact card, please drop it off on the way out. You'll save yourself a postage fee. Microphone. Thank you everyone for coming.